What's up, guys? Andrew here from Drew Reviews. And with Friday the 13th upon us, I thought what a better time than talk about all things Jason Voorhees. So get those campfires ready, because we're ranking them from 11 to 1. It's coming at you now. So coming in at number 11, at the surprise of no one, is Jason Goes to Hell. It's kind of interesting when New Line Cinema got a hold of this franchise. I thought something good might happen, just because of the wild craziness of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies that they were doing. And while I loved the first 15 minutes of the movie, and wish the rest of the film was just like that, instead we get this weird possession body swapping horror thing that has nothing to do with the Friday the 13th franchise. It's not good, and that's why it's here at the bottom. And at number 10, and I see this a lot higher in a lot of people's lists just because it's a lot of fun, and I almost put it at 9, but at number 10 I have to go with Jason X. Like I said, there's a lot of fun to be had with this movie. It's silly. Anytime anything goes into space, like the Leprechaun, you're so far removed from what the franchise started out as that you just have to laugh at it. But that being said, other than some memorable kills and some interesting visuals, the movie itself isn't all that good. Not much to write home about. Good song performance by Kane Hodder here, but this is why Jason X is at number 10 for me. And at number 9, this may be controversial to some because I see it almost dead last on a lot of lists, is Jason Takes Manhattan. And the reason why I chose this over Jason X is it feels a little bit more like a Friday the 13th movie to me, even though they're not at a camp, and most people's main complaint is that they're on this boat for the majority of the movie. I've really got no problems with that. It is kind of a bait and switch. He's only in Manhattan for a few scenes. Those scenes are great. The scene where he's looking at Jensen Daggett's character across Times Square, that's really cool. The scene where he kicks over the guys from the Ghetto's boombox, that's really funny. Hey man, and he lifts up the mask. Really like that scene. There's some really bad stuff too. The little boy Jason, with hair. We established the Mongoloid character and everything, and they kind of went against that. And then at the end, when they're in the sewer system and he reverts back to being a little boy when they kill him, that ending makes no sense to me. You can tell they didn't have an ending for this movie, but I like it just enough, and I watched it enough as a kid. There's probably some nostalgia value there. I put it at number 9. Number 8 for me will be Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. Now, when I first saw this movie as an adult, I just hated it, and it was always near the bottom for me. However, it's moved up my list a little bit just because it's the first of these movies that I've talked about that actually has a legit Friday the 13th feel, even though they're not at a camp. They're like this boarding house for wayward teens and whatever, but the teenage kids feel like something out of a Friday the 13th movie. Other than that, there's very little I like about it. The young man who plays Tommy Jarvis, I don't like his portrayal. It's a little too psychotic for me. Reggie the Reckless is about the only character, and the main girl, I can't remember her name at the moment, right off the top of my head, but they're like the only two characters that I really care about at all in this movie. The rest of them are despicable. Not like Rob Zombie level despicable, but bad all the same. This was directed by a director who I've heard did pornos and stuff, and you can tell it just feels sleazy. There's this whole scene with this toilet humor that's just come on, man, you're bringing the movie down. I know you think it's funny, but that's why it's at number 8 for me. So my 7th ranked Friday the 13th film will be the 2009 remake. Now, I've seen this a lot higher on a lot of other people's lists. There's a guy on YouTube that just does horror, and he's got hundreds of thousands more subscribers than I do, and he feels like this is the number 1 Friday the 13th movie of all time. Are you serious, dude? Are we watching the same movie? I will admit it's shot well. It's a good looking Friday the 13th movie, but the characters are kind of despicable. A lot like the last movie we talked about. And to me, this movie is just a slog to get through. When I was researching it for this video here, I could have swore this movie felt like it was like 2:20, 2.5 hours long. But it's 97 minutes. And it just, I'm like, are you serious? I remember taking like 3 days to watch that because it just felt so long. And while I like the performance of Derek Mears in this movie, he plays a really good running Jason. I like the nod to the sackhead Jason. I feel like they tried to explain away entirely too much with all the tunnel stuff in this movie. We didn't need that. If a guy who's like 6'9", like Derek Mears, is running full speed after you, you don't need to know how Jason's like warping to get to these kids. So, you know, there's a lot of things I did like about this movie, but just the slow pace and some of the other things bring it down to number 7 for me. And coming in at number 6 for me is the original Friday the 13th. Now, this might be a little bit of a hot take, just because, you know, I've seen it anywhere from like number 3 to number 5 on a lot of people's lists. But to me, the whodunit, while done here a little bit better than in Friday Part 5, you know, I'd rather see grown-up Jason, you know, running around doing the killing. Although I will admit, the performance of Betsy Palmer, once she shows up at that camp, especially the scenes where she's breaking down psychologically, are really good, and in a lot of ways are scarier than Jason. But I feel like a lot of the performances in this movie, you had a really young cast. You know, Kevin Bacon and some other youngsters were in this cast, and I feel like they're all kind of vanilla and wooden. They just didn't have a whole lot to bite into, and so for that reason, it's down here. Coming in at number 5 for me is Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. Now, this movie isn't held in as high regard as, you know, like the original or some of the others on this list, but I like this movie a whole lot. Now, this is when Carrie met Jason. You know, she's kicking his butt with all the telekinetic powers that she has, and it's another one where a lot of the teenage kids aren't all that likable. But the performances here by Kane Hodder, who this is his first performance, his first foray into Friday the 13th, and he has that character down from the first time he enters the frame. I really enjoy that. I recently posted a video where I visited this location back in 2018, and I'll post that down in the info box. Be sure and check that video out. I had a lot of fun shooting that with my wife. But yeah, Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, it's like I said, it's not as good as some of these, but to me, there's a lot of fun to be had there. All right, now we're getting into the really good stuff. We're getting into Friday the 13th Part 3D. There's very little about this movie that I don't like. You know, the 3D scenes really stick out badly, especially in this day and age. You know, whoa. But they don't detract enough away from the movie for me to not rank it here at number 4. Where I didn't like the cast of a lot of these movies, some of these kids are really good, like Chris, the main girl. I know a lot of people don't like Shelley, but I think Shelley's a really fun character in this movie. Of course, this is the one where Jason gets his mask, and it feels a little more traditional in the Friday the 13th sense. One of my favorite scenes from the entire franchise and stunts is that scene in the barn where Jason gets hung, like outside the barn loft. That looks just brutal, however they shot that. You know, wiring harness or not, it just, it's painful to watch. But I really like Friday the 13th Part 3, and that's why it's here at number 4. Coming in at number 3 is arguably the best Friday the 13th movie for a lot of people, but, you know, just for personal reasons, it's down here at number 3. Doesn't mean it's bad at all, but that's Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter. Ted White plays Jason Voorhees in this one, and he is so good. This might be my favorite portrayal of Jason Voorhees in any of the movies. I have a problem with the kids. I really don't like too many of them. You know, the kids who come in to the house across from Tommy Jarvis, there's not much to like about them. You know, even bad dancing and all, there's just not much there to like. So you're by this point, you're kind of cheering for Jason to kill these kids off. But even though I don't like that, the vibe to this movie is amazing. That scene, even though it's a terrible kill where, you know, the Jason hunters down in the bottom, Rob, he's killing me. Even though that's just ludicrous, the scene is actually really cool. It's dark and you can't exactly tell what Jason's doing to him, and that makes it more creepy to me. That whole last scene, once Jason comes crashing through the window and into the Jarvis house, that's some really good stuff. Corey Feldman was really good considering how young he was in this movie. But that whole scene in that house, to me, is easily the best part of the movie. So now we're down to the top two, and you know what two they are? Will I pick Friday the 13th Part 2 or Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives? Knowing, my affinity for humor in movies. And I'm going to throw you a swerve here. Coming in at number 2 is Part 6, Jason Lives. This movie's a lot of fun. I've talked about it in my movies of 1986, how much I enjoyed this movie, how it was meta, before movies got meta, how it broke the fourth wall before movies were really doing that, with the caretaker. Where you don't like a lot of the kids in a lot of these movies, you really do care for the kids in this movie. Megan and Tommy Jarvis and all the counselors at the camp. And there's scenes where you're thinking, is Jason really going to go after these little kids and kill them off? Jason's masterfully played by C.J. Graham. There's some great scenes in this movie, some really cool cinematography where Jason, like right at dawn, is standing on top of this burning RV. That's an iconic scene. Really like it. The camp was great. That's one camp. I tell my wife I want to go down there to Georgia one of these times and actually jump off the dock where Jason was drowned in that movie. I just think that would be really fun. And while that might make me a little sick in the head, I just think that would be a lot of fun, to visit that and go jump off that dock. I can't reiterate how much fun this movie is. And if I'm in a mood for a fun film, I'm thinking the Evil Dead series, with Bruce Campbell or something like this. To me, it's no contest. Friday the 13th Part 6 is the most fun. So that's why it's my number 2. But to quote Highlander, there can be only one, and that one for me is Friday the 13th Part 2. I'll review this movie one of these days on this channel. I'm saving it for a rainy day because I love this movie. It's got everything a Friday the 13th movie should have. It's got that creepy vibe while still having some fun at the same time. And this is the one where Jason takes over as the killer. And while he doesn't have his trademark mask until the next movie, I think the sackhead thing might be just as scary. I don't think it's scarier, but I think it's just as scary as him skulking around in a mask. I like the kids a lot in this movie. They had subplots. The guy in the wheelchair, he had a little love interest there. You had the two kids, that got the double penetration stab. That they had quite a little interesting character dynamic going along. Of course, you got Jenny and the main counselor, and I love how she used Jason's love of his mother to try to trick him at the end. That was, her being a child psychology major, that was a really good payoff in this movie, and that's what makes this movie smart to me. Now, there are a couple of things that I take issue with, like the first 15 minutes of the movie, that cold open, I skip. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think it's unnecessary that he went into this town. Why did Jason leave Camp Crystal Lake, and why is he going into this town, after never venturing out of this camp to kill Alice? How does he know where Alice lives? How did he get there? I like to pick up right where this movie starts off, where the kids are driving the truck up the road to the camp. And if you do that, it's a lot more fun for me. I do the same thing with Friday the 13th Part 3. I think that opens just stupid. I can see the argument for Friday the 13th Part 4, where you could say it's better than this movie. I don't like the kids enough to actually like it better than this movie. I think this movie has the perfect storm of everything that you could possibly want in a Friday the 13th film. So that was my ranking of the Friday the 13th movies. I hope you guys have a good Friday the 13th. It's January, so I wouldn't recommend camping or doing bad things out in the woods right now. But leave your list down in the comments, guys. And there is no right or wrong answer here, unless you like Jason Goes to Hell's number 1, and then I'll tell you you're wrong every day. But give me a like and a subscribe as always. And guys, this is Andrew. I'll see you down the line.